comes from South Africa and is one of the global education network, executives. He is Masweneng Mokolwane from South Africa. Masweneng, it's now your turn to present. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Kare. I am so pleased to be part of this session. I've learned a lot this morning from all the presenters. They are all wonderful. I must be honest that I've spent the whole day in the lecture room, and they brought me back to the lecture hall where I've been learning about different philosophers, different scholars who are bringing about education as a weapon of development and as a weapon of moving ahead of the pandemic. My name is Masweneng Mokolwane Eric from Panama Village in Sekhukhune East District, Limpopo Province, South Africa. Our theme this session, the philosophy of life, embracing the challenges of the post-pandemic society. And now, I just want to be clear that I am going to refer back to Statistics South Africa. That is the information that was brought forth, that is gazetted at present in South Africa. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a profound impact globally. We all know that, as the previous speakers have already identified it and have already spoken about it. On 11th of March 2020, it was declared as a global disaster. And it reached South Africa later than most of the other countries of the world. And as such, it had a wide-reaching impact on all South Africans. And as a result, a state of national disaster was declared on the 23rd of March 2020. And lockdown was implemented on the 26th of March 2020 to prevent new infections. Now, this has had a negative impact on the mobility, employment status, and education as my points of discussions today. And now, I just want to be clear before moving ahead with the presentation. South Africa is a small fraction that forms part of the whole, meaning what takes place in South Africa takes place elsewhere in the world. Imagine if we can compare, or if we can convert all South Africa in all districts of the world, and how big it will become. Now, looking at mobility within South Africa, as I said, that the information that I'm going to present comes from Statistics South Africa. I'm going to look at the incidents or during the pandemic. What happened during the pandemic? Now, people changed their provincial residence during the lockdown. People wanted to be closer to their families and friends, and others returned to their usual provinces for essential services such as health, transportation, shopping services, and others. Now, during the course, people lost their jobs due to economic crisis. And the government had declared it that there should be limited public gatherings, which had negative psychological impact, negative social impact, negative economic impact. And as such, mandatory protocols were put in place, such as social distancing and wearing of face masks. Now, even today, people continue to live in fear post-pandemic. People lived in fear before, people are living in fear now, and people still fear what will happen hereafter, because we are not certain whether the pandemic is over or we are still living in it or with it. Now, let us look at mobility after the pandemic. The pandemic has had a tremendous impact on society, such as lowering the physical activities, where people were no longer allowed to be in touch with each other. It increased working from home, but this only favors those who are working. There was telephone shopping, which is still taking place right now, and teleworking. And now this only covers those who can afford. And this has brought about adaptation in the personal lifestyle. And daily mobility and lifestyle-related habits have changed significantly post the pandemic. And pandemic has brought about stress and depression that our people are still and will still suffer from. Now, mental health, distress, and anxiety, which has had a negative effect on the economic situation, especially on the unemployed. Now, looking specifically at my second point, employment status in South Africa. The pandemic has affected the economy and the labor market at large. South Africa was already in technical recession before the pandemic, and which is still the case even right now. Many people lost their jobs due to businesses that were closed, due to companies that were closed. And now, this is another crisis, that which is a global crisis. High inflation rate, high interest rate. This takes place elsewhere in the world due to pandemic. But now, how do we embrace it? We should learn to live with or without the pandemic. Now, let me take you to my philosophy right now. What is my philosophy? I teach, touch, shape, and change the future through modeling. You'll remember modeling from our famous philosopher Vygotsky, wherein the zone of proximal development has to take its effect or to be put in place. I believe that learners need to be motivated. I believe that as an educator, we must allow our learners to learn quickly. Allow for efficient learning that is more inclusive. We must minimize frustration as educators for our learners so that our learners can learn without any hindrance. And we must also allow learners to make mistakes, because mistakes are part of learning. And mistakes are learning as well. So we cannot learn without making mistakes. And as such, modeling should be above everything that a teacher does in the classroom. And now, through modeling, I believe that curricular and extracurricular activities can shape learners' attitude. So if we engage our learners with curricular and extracurricular activities post the pandemic, the attitude will change, because we are now meeting face-to-face, especially in South Africa. I involve my learners to boost their attitude, their confidence, their esteem through competitions, wherein I also involve my colleagues as well. And as such, rewarding learners also brings about positive attitude for the pandemic in learning and teaching, because everyone is still scared and learners need to be motivated. So I give them awards that which I buy from